Good morning, my lovely peaches. Good afternoon, I should say. It is Sunday, August 9th, 2020 at 1:08 p.m. And I took a whole bunch of videos. Let's see, I took 9 videos, although one is 49 seconds, one is 12 seconds. I've got a 28 minute, 2 minute, less than 1 minute, 12 seconds, 28 minutes, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 13 minutes. About an hour of videos from yesterday, and that was August 8th. And then I took 5 videos. I thank me for taking the time to heal before jumping into another relationship. And that's at 28 minutes, 12 minutes, 9, almost 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 4 minutes, those videos. So, let's see. And then, so those videos where I'm thanking myself for the gift of the time that I took to heal before jumping into any relationship, those were from August 5th. No, I'm sorry. Those were from August 7th. Then on August 5th, I took a 6-part series, and this is me talking about why you shouldn't be sad, why I shouldn't be sad to move on. 3 minutes, 10 minutes, 13 minutes, 4 minutes, 29 minutes, 12 seconds. So I have been taking videos for the past week, taking videos, recording myself talking about these things, editing them. On July 30th, I took 4 videos. These ones were, well, 2 of them were long, about having a small enough ego but high self-worth and high value and high self-love to not be stuck on something that doesn't suit. So in one of the videos that I was talking about my ex, my baby's daddy, I talk a lot about the reason I chose him was because I had no self-worth. And I also talk about that he did not love me as a wife, and that I did not feel ever deeply loved by him. I talked about that he would have these disassociative sexual fantasies with me. He would engage in these disassociative sexual fantasies with me, and he would say things like, those aren't things that he would want to do in real life. He's just turned on by the fantasy, that because I'm turned on by it. So I made some notes for myself because as I was watching, I felt like it was really important for me to say, not only did he not love me as a wife, I did not love him as a husband. Not only did he not want to actually in real life do the fantasies we were fantasizing about sexually, but I did not want to do those fantasies in real life. It was all about disassociating. He is not gay and I am straight, and we used to fantasize a lot about basically another man being with us. Another man being with us, doing things to him that he wouldn't want done in real life, and doing things with us in the fantasy that I didn't want to do either. I didn't actually want to have another man in our bed. I didn't want to have another man in our relationship. But that was where I was able to function. And also, I was not connecting to him in true intimacy. So I just really wanted to make this video that said, yes, I said all that stuff about him. I said that I was with him because of low self-worth, lacking self-worth. But that's not because he's a low quality person, and that's not because he's not beautiful. He is beautiful and sexy and talented, and he has many, many characteristics and qualities that I did believe were well matched. And even though I say I chose him because I had lacking of self-worth, what I mean by that is that I knew deep down that he didn't really love me. And my fantasy, I was so deeply attached to the fantasy of being with him. And that fantasy was based on a lacking of self-worth. The 16 years since we had broken up, I knew that he didn't truly love me as a wife. He didn't want to stay with me and be serious with me. He wanted to break up and still be friends, but friends with benefits, but, you know, move on and not have any real deep thing with me. And when we got back together in 2007, it was never about falling deeply in love, being deeply committed. He even had told me a few times that he felt like he fell in love with me back in high school in 1990, but then we had an intense one-year thing. He outgrew it. We broke up. And when we got back together in 2007, he said it wasn't like he was falling in love with me. It just, you know, I came back, we started to date, and, you know, this is what I'm saying. He committed to me after, let's say, 6 months. He committed to me that we were going to be exclusive, but I never clarified what that meant. I never clarified, does that mean that you would consider marrying me in the future? I always just went along with it without asking the real questions because I was afraid of the answer, which was no. And this is what I'm saying. If I had true self-worth, it doesn't mean you're not beautiful, you're not sexy, you're not all these amazing things. It means that if I had self-worth, if I believed that I was worthy of marriage, worthy of a man committing to me, then instead of looking at the situation like, this is my fantasy. So the other thing about my fantasy was that I always believed, you're my true love, who I'm destined to not be with. You're my true love that I'm destined to not be with. So that in itself, believing that my true love could be someone that I'm destined to not be with is a junky belief system right there. You can't be my true love soulmate if I'm destined to not be with you. If I have a sense of self-worth, then I know that you cannot be simultaneously my soulmate, true love, and destined to not be with me. Because if you're destined to not be with me, then you are not my soulmate, true love. And if you're my soulmate, true love, then we're destined to be together. That's if I have a sense of self-worth. So I really just want to stress, the reason I went with heart was multifaceted. I was so desperately in love with the idea of being with him. He was my fantasy. He had been my fantasy true love since I was 17 years old. And 16 years later, when I finally had the opportunity to get back in an exclusive relationship with Heart, nothing and no one was going to make me not do that. Not the fact that Val came back into my life or I came back into his life and it was revealed to me that actually the way you feel, like your body and your emotions and your energy and your vibration and everything that seems well aligned and well matched, all of that is leaning towards Val. Val, the man who's been your friend all these years, unlike Hart, who we had a connection, but like I said, it was mostly a friends with benefits. I see you once every few years, and we're not really like friends. Val was a friend. Val was like, he taught me how to drive stick shift, and we used to talk on the phone, and we chatted on instant messenger every day, every other day. And this was like ongoing for years, that me and Val were actually friends. Where me and Hart were exes, and I was hung up on him, and I just really, 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 really need to emphasize that I chose Hart because I was obsessed and fixated with the fantasy of him, and nothing was going to get in the way of that. Not the fact that Hart himself didn't want what I wanted in life. Not the fact that he said, I don't think I'll ever get married and have children, but if I do, I don't see myself doing that with you. Not the fact that when I did become pregnant, which was a miracle, that at the very beginning, before we even moved in together, he told me, well, I definitely want to have the baby. That's not a question, but I don't really want to have the baby with you. But I was already pregnant with him. Not the fact that he didn't want to live with me and didn't want to get married, and he used to say things like his fantasy was to get a tiny house and live in a tiny house, and I was like, that's like the opposite of what I want. And he also really kind of wanted to move to San Francisco, which is all the way across the country, and I had no desire to do that. I had already been living 3.5 years across the country, and I had come back because I had had enough of that, and we just were not well matched. We were not well suited. And then once we actually did get into a relationship, for a long time, he never wanted to talk about feelings. He used to say realer feelings. He didn't want to talk about that. And all of this is just to say that I do not want to put a video out there and make it seem like I did not actively choose to be with Hart. I chose it. I pursued him. I wanted him above and beyond anyone else, even though all of the signs were pointing to this other person is way better of a match for you, except that person not saying so, which brings me to another point that I wrote down, that I have been obsessed with this specific person, Val, and yet he is not even my ex. He's not even an ex-boyfriend. He's not. He's an ex-lover. He's an ex-friend. But we never even had a relationship where we were committed to each other in any way whatsoever. We were friends, and then we were friends with benefits. And that was it. And last thing I want to say is that his birthday passed. August 7th was his birthday, and I texted him, something really sweet, like, happy birthday, sexy beast. May all your wishes and dreams come true, and they will, with some flowers and sparkle emojis. And he wrote, thanks, with an exclamation point. That was it. And I also purchased a little gift, a little mug with basically just, I had it personalized with his name. It says best cat dad ever, and it's super cute. And I was checking this morning online to see, when is it going to be delivered, and I saw it was delivered yesterday. Now, the way that the order was, there was no option for me to put a gift card or anything like that. And with many Amazon packages, they don't send an invoice. So it's very highly possible, it occurred to me after I had purchased it, he may get this mug with no name attached to who it was from. But I thought, you know, I'm the person whose cat sat for him the last 3 years. The last 5 times he had cat sitting needs, it was me. So I thought, you know, maybe he'll ask a few people, did you send me this? And he would figure it out. But he received it yesterday and I've heard nothing. Not a peep. So just to add to this so-called SP, he's not an SP. He's an SP. He's a specific person, but he's just the past. He's an old lover, old friend, and I'm feeling a little salty, kind of hurt that he didn't even at least bother to say, hey, was that mug from you? But you know what? It's just, oh, another thing I wanted to say, this is like a Matthew Hussey thing. The only closure you need is that they don't want you. Closure. You don't want me? That's it. I don't need to know why. Can the knowing why help you? Yeah, sure. Like if you're at a job and they let you go and it's not just because, you know, actual layoffs, but like a real reason they didn't like you. Yes, it's more helpful for you as a person, personal growth, if they tell you why. It can be helpful. And the same when a relationship ends, it can be very helpful to know why, but it's not required or necessary. And all the closure you need is that they don't want to be with you. That's it. The closure is you're not interested, like I was saying in the last video that I made yesterday out on my walk. I want to be a queen who has a king. I want to be a wife who has a husband. I want to be a partner who's a monogamous, exclusive, committed, romantic, intentional partner who has a monogamous, exclusive, committed, intentional, romantic partner. Then the chumps are not going to work. You're not going to do an amazing, wonderful, magnificent, brilliant, gorgeous, beautiful, loving job at being my husband if you are not interested. So you're disqualified. That's it. That's closure. That's the closure. So I just really, really wanted to add this video to say, heart, I was obsessively, fixatedly fantasized up about you for 20 years. We got together 16 years after we broke up, and the whole time I was still obsessed with him. And I also really realized my fixation and obsession with him was a block to actually loving him. When I say I didn't feel deeply loved, I know he didn't feel deeply loved because I wasn't intimately, truly loving him. I was loving the fantasy. There were countless days, years, where we would text during the day and I was like, oh, this is great. And in my mind, the fantasy of us is amazing. Then he would come home and the reality of his behavior and my behavior and our personalities, we would clash. I mean, a lot of it was because he didn't really want to be there. He ended up trapped in a circumstance, in a situation where he didn't want to get married. He didn't want to have a family. He didn't want to have that kind of life with me. And then I was pregnant, and now we're living together, and we're living together with a baby. And then that became, we're living together with 2 children. And it was like a marriage simulation, but without the commitment, without the desire for that commitment, without the desire for that lifestyle, without even wanting, like, he thought moving back to our hometown was a failure, and that played in because I thought moving back to our hometown was the biggest success that I could do because that's what I wanted to do. And he thought that he was, he had the blueprint in his mind since he was like a teenager, I guess, that he would branch out into his own town, that he would find his own place to live, kind of like what his dad had done. His dad was from Connecticut, and him and his mom, when Hart was 3 months old, they moved to the hometown that he grew up in, and same as I grew up in. And so he had this whole concept in his mind. That's what you do when you're a man. And to stay in his hometown, in his filter junkie belief system, he told himself that that was a failure. So he felt trapped. He was trapped back with his high school sweetheart that he wasn't really in love with, having a baby with me when he didn't want to be a father. He never once, even for a split second, hinted or suggested that we not have the baby. The instant that I was pregnant and he knew, he wanted the baby. He's always wanted the baby. He just didn't want me, and he didn't want the relationship with me, and he didn't want to be parents with me, and he didn't want to be husband and wife with me, and he didn't want to live with me, and all of that came that he thought he had to do. And so, some people say, oh, well, you lived with him for 7 years, it's like you were married. No, it's not like we were married, because when you're married, you're both committed to the marriage and to each other, and you're all in, at least in a healthy marriage. And that's not what we ever had. That's what I was saying yesterday. Anytime the topic of marriage or engagement came up, we both knew the answer was no. I wouldn't bring it up in the beginning. I was too terrified because I knew the answer would be no, and I was too afraid to bring it up. But as time moved on and my fantasy bubble burst with the hard, cold reality of the misery that was our lives, I knew I couldn't say yes to him. Even if he asked me to marry him, how could I say yes? I wanted to want to, but the reality was there's no way I could marry this person. We're miserable. But yet I was so deeply entrenched with the I'm not worthy belief, and also deeply entrenched in Hart is my guy. No matter how much we don't get along, no matter how much he doesn't want the things that I want, no matter how much he doesn't love me the way I deserve to be loved, I didn't believe that's the kicker or the trick right there. I didn't believe deep down that I deserved and that I was worthy of being loved in that way. So the next best thing was to attach everything to the fantasy of Hart. Like I said in a couple of videos, I cared more about being with him than I cared about being with myself. I cared more about being in a relationship with Hart than I cared about being in a relationship with myself. I loved Hart more than I loved myself. But that's not actually true, because lack of loving myself led me to be able to believe I was loving someone when actually I was just fixated on an obsessive fantasy of that person and not actually connecting in true intimacy with him or to him. Ergo, not actually loving him. He felt just as unloved as I felt. No matter how much I thought I was in love with him, I wasn't. And the same is true for Val. I thought I was in love with him. I may have been in love with him back then, but I'm not in love with him now. Because right now, he's just kind of a memory, a ghost, a completely disinterested party. He's absent. He's not there. He's not here. So I cannot be in love with someone who's not here. And like I said, you're not wanting me is closure. You're not wanting me is the disqualification of your eligibility to be my partner. So you're not eligible. You're not an option. And all of this is just to add to why I shouldn't feel sad about moving on, and how do you up level and yes, live through the pain enough to get to the up-leveled version, so that the up-leveled knowing of yourself will soothe the pain from the previous level. Every level is going to require emotional, spiritual growth and physical growth and mental growth. So I guess I've finally come to understand no pain, no gain is actually true. It sounds really negative, but it's not. It's like I wrote that book, The Joy of Pain. And again, this is not masochistic, I just get off on hurting you kind of pain. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about hurting people, and I'm not even talking about hurting yourself on purpose. Well, I guess I am talking about hurting yourself on purpose, meaning hurting yourself on purpose with the purpose of, I am going to allow myself to dive into the pain and the painful experiences and the painful memories and the painful junky belief systems and the painful self lacking of love and the lacking of self-worth, and all of that stuff is painful to dive into that. But I'm going to swim across this on purpose to get to the healing. And it doesn't mean that the pain never hurts anymore, but it subsides, it lessens, it fades, and with the clarity of the new knowing, you soothe it, I soothe it, I'm soothing it. So I'm going to finalize this video saying, yes, I do agree and believe no pain, no gain. But you've got to do it strategically and not just running out there, running across hot coals and a bed of nails just to fucking prove that you can. And then, you're all burnt up and stabbed up and you're like, I can't even walk now. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about strategic, guided, purposeful, going through things. And do it with a love coach if you can. Do it with a life coach. Do it with a friend that you trust who's willing and able and desiring to do that with you. Do it with your best friend. Do it with your husband, your wife, your spouse, your partner. Go through these emotional upheavals with a trusted loved one so that you've got someone to embrace you and to contain you within the safety of that relationship while you heal. That's my advice to myself and to you. And I love living, and I love living Peach. Thank you if you're following along my journey. And I really, really am looking so forward. I am so excited about learning to love a man truly and true intimacy, not based on a fantasy, not based on hung up old shit, not based on, I don't really believe I'm worthy and I think you're the greatest and I'm not that interested in loving myself. I'm interested in loving you and you're not interested in loving me, but I don't think I'm worthy of love, so I'm just going to go with you anyway. All of that nonsense, like essentially you're more important than me. I'm going to self-abandon dancing because that makes you feel awkward. So I want to be with you more than I want to be with me. So I'm not going to do the things that if I do them, it's going to push you away from me because you won't like me as much. But the fucking sick reality is that me self-abandoning myself makes you not like me as much anyway because I'm not even being authentic. And you can feel that. So the answer is just be authentic. Learn to love myself. Learn to love being with myself. Learn to love being myself. Learn to love doing the things that I love to do and knowing that the people who will love that and love me for the things that are authentic to me, those are the people that I want love from. Not people I have to chase, not people I have to pursue, not people I have to convince, not people I have to grovel or beg or cast aside things like wanting love and marriage, commitment, monogamy, and all that stuff. In order to be with you, I have to cast aside half of myself. That is lacking self-worth. So as much as I loved apart and still love him now. He's still beautiful. He's still amazing. He's still one of the best people I've ever met. And he's still not my husband. And now I can finally see and say, I never loved you as a husband. And you deserve that. And you didn't love me as a wife. And I deserve that. And we love each other. We respect each other to some level. We respect each other highly enough to want the best for our relationship so that our children can thrive. And that's important to me. So I feel better now that I've added these things to the message, because I think it was so important to say. I chose you, and I say I chose you from lack of self-worth, not because you're not amazing, heart, but because we weren't the right match for each other, and I let my fantasy of you be more important than actually intimately connecting with you. And that was bad for me and equally bad for you. And I know that. And I take 100% of this on myself. I was saying about Catherine Woodward Thomas, and then I got distracted in the video where I was saying she teaches that in any relationship or circumstance, even if 97% of the fault is on the other person, the 3%, or even let's be as generous to yourself as you can, the 1% that was how I showed up not well, that's what I need to focus 100% of my energy on. 100% of my energy, I should focus on the 1% that was me. And the rest, the 99% of what the other person did wrong, that's on them. What I did in the circumstance that brought things to that place, that's what I need to focus all my energy on healing. And that's what I've been doing. Finally. So once again, thank you. Join me on my blog, LivingPeach.com. Join me on YouTube, either Love Living Peach, where I'm dancing, or Love Living Peach Dream, where I share talking videos. Join me on Patreon, which you must be if you're watching this, because I'm only going to share this on Patreon. I'll see you on Instagram at Cat Love Not War, and at Twitter at Living Peach, Love Living Peach. See you. Bye.